Alright, folks. Can you hear me? Let me see if I can get my chat up on my phone. Alright, how's everybody doing tonight? Let's see. Hello, Monorail fan. Hello, Peter. Welcome. Hello, Leviathan York. Hello, Robert. Hello, Chase. Hello, Ingt S4L. Hello, trains are very cool. Hello, Left-Handed Railroader. Hello, Caboose. Welcome, everyone. Okay, so this is the first O-Gauge stream. You can see no scenery yet, but I have painted the layout surface so it looks a tiny bit less unfinished than it did before. And yeah, we're gonna run some trains. Left-Handed Railroader, I just started the stream like 2 minutes ago. And Chase, yeah, the 440 is custom. It's an MTH Rail King model. Actually, let me pull that out. We can run that one first. So this started out as an MTH Rail King General. I repainted it and added a few details and a 3D printed cab that looks a little bit closer to the right proportion, because the original cab is really, really tall. And I also weathered the wood load and made a little wooden, well, fake wooden, it's 3D printed, but I made a little thing to go around the outside of the wood bunker. I do have this wired for DCC. The decoder that's in it right now is an old QSI one, because it's what I had lying around. So it sounds about the same as the original Proto Sound 1, if I'm honest. But let's give it a run. Also, I'm sorry about the fan noise in the background. It is very, very hot on the East Coast right now, so if I'm going to survive the stream, I have to have the AC running. Hello, Crazy Spud. Hello, Washington Railboy. And I don't have any old-timey passenger cars for this, so I guess we'll just pull my regular Pullmans with it. These are Williams full-scale Pullman coaches. The only mod I've done so far is removing the lighting, because the pickup rollers didn't roll very freely and they were causing a lot of drag, which made them difficult to pull. So I took those off. You couldn't really see them in this lighting anyway. Eventually, I want to add full interiors and LED lighting. But for now, let's turn the manuals. Also, I haven't run these in a while, and they are quite dusty. So, let me fix that real quick. I will try to keep an eye on the chat, but since I'm not right next to my computer this time, I've got it on my phone. So I'll be back and forth. Okay. Let me adjust the camera a little bit so you can see the layout better. Alright, and for those who aren't aware, I do have this layout wired for DCC, even though it's 3-rail. I have a whole video on that you can check out. So yeah, not the greatest sound system in the world, but it's at least DCC controllable, which is nice. It's actually slipping a little bit trying to pull this. 87, 90, that sounds about right. It is... Doesn't say the temperature right now, but it says it's supposed to be 86 tomorrow, which sounds about right. That's what it's been all day. Thank you, Chase. I'm quite proud of this one. Power cab MU system. Yeah, I mean, anything that works in any other scale should work in O. Most modern O-scale locomotives use DC CAN motors, including this one, so you can just wire up a decoder like you would in any other way. Yes, Peter, the heavyweights are scale. Ryan, I'm filming this on my old Panasonic camcorder. I did just get a new Sony camcorder, but I haven't figured out how to rig that up for live streams yet, so I'll film the next channel video with it. Well, the next channel video that's coming out I've already filmed, but the one after that will be filmed with that, but right now I'm still using the Panasonic for the streams. Oh, nice Rambling Railfan, you got the D10. Model Railfan, okay, so the DCC and O-Gauge works the same as any other pickup system in O-Gauge. The two outside rails are one side of the circuit and the middle rail is the other. So the pickups don't need any modification. You literally just take the two wires, one's usually grounded to the frame, that's the outside rail, the other usually goes to the pickup rollers, and wire those to the track pickups of the DCC decoder, and then you should be good to go with that. Wire the outputs to the motor, assuming it's a DC CAN motor. Older AC powered trains that don't have a CAN motor, like the old Lionel Polmore motors or Universal motors, those will not work with DCC. They draw way too much current. But anything made past like the mid-90s, you can probably convert with minimal trouble. Yes, CC Studios, it's a custom General. It started out as an MTH Rail King General, but I repainted it and I swapped a few parts around, and the cab's 3D printed. Ryan, the camcorder has an HDMI output, so that goes to an HDMI to USB converter, which goes into my computer, and then it just sees it as a webcam. Yeah, Chase, we'll get a train going on the inside loop momentarily. Somebody was interested in seeing the Menards F unit. So I got this used at a train show a few months back. It is scale size. Runs pretty decent. There's a squeak that I can't find the source of. I've oiled everything that moves and it still squeaks, so I don't know what's going on with that. But other than that, it runs pretty good. So let's get that running on the inside loop, and I'll put a freight train behind it. Oops. Okay, that's the trouble with 3-rail, is it's very easy to accidentally bridge across the contacts. What I should do is turn off the power to the inside loop before I put trains on the track. And because the Menards has its own remote control, it can run on AC or DC track power, or indeed DCC, which is sort of like AC. So even though the track is currently powered with DCC, I'll be able to run the Menards off its remote control. I'm not going to use all my freight cars because that would be a bit excessively long, but I'll put some of them on here. Forgot this caboose has marker lights, so it doesn't go at the back. Where is the remote? No more Chessie System Switcher? No, I sold that one. Team Tsunami or Team Soundtrack? Well, Tsunami's made by Soundtracks, so both. I don't have an ES44AC. I don't really have anything modern. The most modern thing I have is a GP38. Can you convert O-Gauge 3-rail to run on 2-rail? You could if you were, like, if you could swap out all the wheels, it's doable, but 3-rail uses much deeper flanges than 2-rail track, so it would be kind of a problem in that way. And also on 3-rail equipment, the 2 outside rails, or the 2 outside wheels are usually electrically connected together, which is difficult to undo. So it's easier to convert 2-rail equipment to 3-rail than the other way. I'm sorry, Union Pacific, I don't have anything modern. The closest I have is the UP GP38, which we can run in a little bit. Ryan, I'm going to make a video soon about converting O-Gauge locomotives to DCC. MTH Protosound 3 stuff will run on DCC out of the box. Anything else, you have to add a decoder. In a little bit, we'll run my Lionel Southern 4501, which has TCS WOW sound in it. For now, let's get the Menards engine going. I have the engine sound turned off on this, the prime mover sound, because it really doesn't sound anything like the real thing. It's just kind of a dull roar. But blow the horn, bell, etc. The 119 we can run a little bit. The 382 does not run, but I guess we can push it with a diesel. The Genset, no, I sold that. The General, closer to its modern appearance. The thing is, these are pretty close to the General's modern appearance out of the box, so I wanted to do something different with it. Carrying 3 freight cars at once. I've gotten used to juggling a lot of train cars. You should see how many HO ones I can carry. Yes, YCRY, there will be an O-Gauge layout update pretty soon. I'd like to show you all this control panel that I built. I'd like to cover some of my plans for scenery. Because right now, I only have the 2 buildings on the layout. I have the station there, which needs to be repainted, and I have the door factory back there, which is Woodland Scenic building. I need to wire that for lights still. Yep, Crazy Spud, that sounds like Railroads Online. The cheapest scale 440s that are not legacy, well, depends how close to scale you want them to be. You can pick up these Rail King 440s decently cheap, but they are not really technically scale. They're quite a bit oversized for the actual prototype, which is the General. I've modified this one to look more like a scale model of a larger engine with a smaller cab. So you can, if you're freelancing, you can get those looking somewhat decent. If you want something that's actually scale, the MTH Premier ones are really nice. The tooling is based on New York Central 999, which I also have one of those. We'll run that in a little bit. This one is the Union Pacific 119, so it's quite a bit oversized for 119, but it would be scale for, let's say, a later 1890s engine dressed up as 119 for a movie or something like that. So as far as true scale 440s go, other than the brass hybrid legacy ones, this is pretty much your only option. Matter of fact, we can run this. I'll have to switch the outside loop to AC power because this still has the MTH electronics in it, and I don't have a DCS controller. Yeah, the new Lion Chief 440 looks honestly pretty lazy. It's very cheap and kind of plasticky looking. I actually have two of the Premier 440s. I think my 999 has the 5 chime. It's the same whistle as this, so you'll hear it in a second. Why is that not working? Is the light on? Oh. It would help if I actually turned on the power supply. I do not have a Dreyfus Hudson, unfortunately. That's on my bucket list to get. Oh, that Niagara guy, you just missed it. I was running it for the first few minutes of the stream. We can run it again in a little bit, but I want to run this first. I do need some more time cards. I'm designing some that will be 3D printable, so that'll be a video of something. I hope you guys can hear this okay. I know there is a bit of fan noise in the background, and there's a lot of noise from the track because it's O-scale, and these things weigh a ton. Audio's good? Okay, excellent. Model Railfan, Lionel does make some really nice looking scale stuff, but the prices they charge for it are just bonkers. I don't know who can possibly afford that. So realistically, like, the only Lionel stuff I have is up from the 90s. Now I gotta figure out where I left my beverage. Shouldn't really lift that while there's trains running, but I can time it right. The new Storyteller, yeah, the other layout is in the other room. That's sort of, the HO layout is in sort of the main room in the attic. This is a storeroom off to the side. It's actually larger, but because the walls slope, it's kind of a weird room to use for anything, so I turned it into an O-gauge room. That Niagara guy, I actually have the MTH 999. We'll swap this one out for it in a few minutes. Yes, Vintage Renewed, this is the Menards unit. It runs decently. I'm not a huge fan of the sounds, but I mean, I understand they're built to a price point. Other than that, it's a decent looking model. Alright, let's swap the 119 out for 999. You will note that these are mostly the exact same model. The cab is different, the domes are different, and the drivers are smaller on the 119. And the headlight is different. But other than that, most of it is the exact same tooling. So all of the MTH Premier 440s are based on this tooling. They've done it painted up as a bunch of different things, but they are all pretty much just 999. And it is a nice looking model, but it's not accurate for a lot of the things that they use it for. I'm gonna do a video on these two pretty soon. Q&A video, I mean, that's kind of what these, oh yeah, the smokestack is different. That's kind of what these streams are for, but we could definitely do one at some point. I'm gonna put this on the siding over here. I have it wired so I can isolate this siding so there's no power going to it, so it won't run away. Yeah, I have a lot of 440s. I think that's all the ones that I have in oak scale, but I do have a few in other scales. Alright, I believe this is going to be the same whistle. Yep. Did you want a 10-wheeler chassis with larger wheels? I've looked into that, but nobody really makes a 10-wheeler chassis with even close to the right proportions. The Williams and MTH ones, the drivers are way too small. They could maybe look into like the Rail King Camelback, but I think they'd probably be too small on that as well. The 382 had really, really big drivers. Yeah, basically a publicly oversized 119. Honestly, I'm probably going to sell the 119 because I don't really need two of these. And the 999 is obviously the nicer one. I mean, they're both nice models, but the 999 is far more accurate for the prototype. So that makes sense for that to be the one that I keep. The new Storyteller, eventually this layout's going to get the full scenery treatment. I'm going to have mountains all along this side, and there's going to be a cityscape all along this side with a narrow gauge trolley line going back and forth. I have it all drawn up virtually. I do not have any of the MTH command control stuff. I knew I was going to be running a mix of different brands of equipment, so rather than standardizing on Legacy or DCS, since I like to replace the electronics and stuff anyway, I just standardized on regular DCC, and eventually I'll get around to converting all my stuff to DCC. It's also cheaper to buy like an old MTH engine and convert it to DCC than it is to buy a new Legacy engine. Steam isn't king. I would love to run the Williams 460, but unfortunately it's not currently running. I took the decoder out of it to use in something else, and I haven't put another one in yet, so I could pull it out and we can look at it, but it is not currently operational. Yeah, a modern 440 would be really nice. 999 to 100 miles an hour. Alright, well, we can try it. It's a bit scary, I'll warn you. But it will do it. Alright, that's about enough of that. I'm scared this thing's gonna fly off the layout. Yeah, go right ahead, Crazy Spud. That's what the community's for. Yeah, the new Storyteller. Right now, this is literally just brown paint on plywood. I just painted the whole thing to give myself like a blank canvas to put scenery on, and so because it would look a little bit nicer than the bare wood, but it's definitely still unfinished. Yeah, Gomez Adams. Put like a little exploding bridge somewhere. Yeah, classic O scale, especially like the older post-war stuff, often is very high speed. I tend not to do that because I'm trying to make this more scale-ish. And because I'm scared of my $700 440 yeeting itself off of here, wreck of the old 97 style. Chase, I don't have the PS2 controller. I'm just running this on analog. So I'm sure there's probably some sequence of buttons for that, but I'd have to look it up. Oh, nice left-handed railroad. No, Crazy Spud, I'll have to look for that. I haven't checked the community stuff all day. Yeah, it can go even faster. It actually could go faster than that. The control panel that I built uses the insides and power supply from an MTH Z750, which goes up to, I think, 22 volts. I believe these are geared to hit 100 miles an hour at about 18 volts, so that's as high as I got it. I timed it at one point on 18 volts and it was almost exactly 100. YCRY, the USRA 060 is also waiting on a decoder. I had a Blue Nami decoder in it and it wasn't really working very well. I think I needed the larger 4 amp one because the 2 amp one, it would run by itself, but if I tried to pull anything, it would shut down because it was drawing too much current. Bell, whistle, whistle, whistle. Okay, I'll try that in a second.
Launched itself in the blue car turn halfway across the room. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm afraid of. It's fun when it's an old vintage one that is designed to handle that sort of thing. But this 999 is pretty detailed, and I don't think it will survive that. Okay. Bell, whistle, whistle, whistle.
I think that was the proto couplers. Robert, unfortunately the Red Oak number 3 is waiting on a new decoder right now, so it's not able to run. I'll try and get it up and running in time for next week's stream. Steam isn't king. O-Gauge is pretty good about staying on the track at ridiculous speeds. These are also quite broad curves. On tighter curves, I think it would have probably flown off. This is 72-inch diameter on the outside and 60 on the inside, or 63, I think, on the inside. Yeah, we can run the GP38. Let me get 999 going again, and we'll swap the F unit out for it. Nope, that's reverse. So this is the GP38. I don't know if he's watching, but my friend Quentin, I traded him a Spectrum HO 10-wheeler for this. Vintage Renewed, the 999 is Proto Sound 2. Put this in the siding here. Because it has the remote, it won't go anywhere. Yes, Robert, this is Williams. Oh, and I forgot to turn the power off. Yeah, you can tell it's Williams because of the handrails. I might end up selling this thing again, or I might end up keeping it and just trying to detail it a bit.
Actually, I'm going to stop the 999 so you can hear this better, because this does have actually halfway decent sound. So these Williams engines, this is one of the later ones, so this has the True Blast Plus instead of the regular True Blast. I have heard rumors that this was developed partly by Soundtrax, and it certainly sounds a lot like Soundtrax. So what it is you turn on the power. Oh, that's the outside track, hold on. Okay, something came unplugged. Hold on a sec. There we go. Okay. Power supply for AC on the inside was unplugged. So it will start moving at a pretty low voltage, but if I put it in neutral, you can hear it rev up based on the voltage. The speaker's not the greatest, but you can hear that sounds a lot like the Soundtrax sound file. But because the motor starts at such a low voltage, it frequently is moving pretty fast before it starts to rev up. So if I keep this thing, I'm probably going to rewire the motors from parallel to series to slow it down a little bit. Anyway, let's get it moving. And the GP38 doesn't have any kind of electronically regulated speed control, so the speed's going to be all over the board. Oh, it's one bell and two whistles, okay. New Storyteller, I'll have to take a look at your channel, I haven't seen that. Crazy Spot, I actually have an Elko switcher, I'll run it in a little bit. It's not currently lettered for the Red Oak, but that could change in the future. Alright, let's try that auto depart thing again. I think I might have pressed them too fast because that's just the bell. Yeah, Crazy Spot, I have an RS1. We'll dig it out a little bit. Why is the bell not stopping? Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button. I don't know. Okay, it's in some kind of weird mode now where the bell is just stuck on and it doesn't respond to anything. I think I may have to turn the power off and back on again. Yeah, it's not typing it code, and you have to time it just right. Again. Alright, so bell, whistle, whistle. Maybe I have to start it moving?
What do we do? Charlie!
There we go.
Wow! Wow! 31.5 seconds! Hey, we just beat the world speed record!
speed first. Okay, let's try that. Okay, now it won't move. I'm gonna have to turn off the power and let it figure itself out for a minute before I try this again. I'll move it back a little bit so we can roll slowly forward. We'll do Three Rivers Rambler. Every tourist railroad in the U.S. has an S4, probably because they were so common. Go ahead and ask Supersonic what you got. Okay, I'm going to turn this one off for now so we can hear it. Alright, roll forward slowly. And then bell, horn, horn. That's just the bell. Yeah, it was doing something for a minute. I think maybe what you gotta do.
What do we do? Charlie, you hit 112 and 1/2.
That did something.
A mile in 31 and a half seconds. Hey, we just beat the world speed record. Dale, did you see those people on Christmas? They didn't know what was coming through town.
Well, alrighty then, that did something. Let me try one more time.
They never saw anything so fast. There never was anything so fast.
So do you have to like hit direction?
Ladies and gentlemen, we did it! We set the fastest time ever! Wow!
I keep hitting direction and it keeps just giving me more dial.
Charlie, the water's getting low in the glass. You need to get over to the water tank. All right, we got to get the crowd off the track. Play on the whistle.
Oh, I missed it, Supersonic. Can you ask me again? Okay, I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna back it up again, and then we're gonna try hitting bell, whistle, whistle while it stopped, and then direction, and see what happens. Okay. Bell, horn, horn, direction.
What do we do? Charlie, you hit 112 and 1/2. Wow! A mile in 31 and a half seconds.
I missed your question, Supersonic. Can you ask it again?
World speed record.
So was that it? Because it did more dialogue before. Maybe I have to hit direction again to make it do it. Train fan? No, unfortunately, Big Boy isn't coming far enough east for me to see it, unless I want to travel like 6 hours. Okay, I think this thing is done save stuff. I'll try hitting direction again. Nope.
Dale, did you see those people on Christmas? They didn't know
there's
what was
more.
coming through town.
Oh, New York Central Hudson's, before they're scrapped, which one would be your favorite? I don't know. I mean, which one was the one that was streamlined twice? I always forget the number, but that I feel like is kind of the iconic one, the Commodore Vanderbilt. Oh, okay, so the words do play automatically, it just takes a while? Alright, well, I don't have time for that. I think it might be done. That might have been it. Let's see. We'll take this for a couple more laps, and then maybe I'll pull out something else, because I do have a couple more engines to run. I'd like to try running this at some point tonight. This is a Lionel Mogul. It supposedly has TMCC, but I think something's wrong with the TMCC board because it doesn't chuff and it behaves strangely. I am going to put DCC in this eventually. I'll make a video on that, but it does run, it just sometimes acts bizarrely. Yeah, we can run the 4501. Actually, let's put the 4501 on the passenger train now, and we'll put the Mogul on the freight train. I'll put 999 over here with its twin. 4501 is probably the best example I have of a DCC converted O-gauge engine. For steam at least, because this has TCS wow sound in it and it sounds really good. The 060 is still waiting on a decoder. Yeah, I did change the whistle. I was trying to find one that sounded more like 4501 in real life. It's had a ton of different whistles, but I think this sounds pretty close to one of them. I forget which one it is. This one is TCS wow sound, but the Alco has Bluenami in it. Here's the Alco. We can swap out the Jeep with this one. Chase, the 060 is waiting on a new decoder. The one I put in it wasn't quite of sufficient amperage. So this one I'll actually run with Blue Nami. I'm going to back this all the way around and pick up the train. Oh, actually, before this gets too far, I want to show you something cool. I actually managed to rig up a circuit with a capacitor and a relay so I can operate the proto-couplers using Blue Nami. So the coupler's closed right now. Watch this. It does play the uncoupled sound too, it's just kind of quiet, but you can't run these directly off the decoder function output because they draw way too much power, so instead it trips a relay that feeds them power from a capacitor that's charged from the track. So it doesn't draw too much current from the track all at once. Yeah, we can push 382. Actually, I don't know if 382 will take the curves on the inside loop. We might have to run on the outside loop. Left-handed rail rotor, I'm not certain if it's a Reading 6 chime. I just went through the whistles until I found one that sounded vaguely like 4501. Oops, okay, I forgot to keep an eye on it. It is a Reading? Okay. Chase, I have the Williams down here, but it doesn't currently run because it needs a decoder. Which screw leads to the motor? Ooh, that's a good question. Let me go take a look. So this is 382. This is an old Rivarossi plastic model that's designed for 2-rail O scale. This bottom cover plate is metal, but the entire rest of the frame is plastic, so it's quite flimsy. I took the motor out of this one, so it just freewheels. It doesn't like 3-rail track very much. I'm trying to remember exactly how I got the motor out of this thing. I'm pretty sure I had to take the bottom cover plate off, and then the motor sits vertically inside the firebox. I think the screw that holds it in is not accessible directly from the outside. But it should be pretty straightforward once you get the cover plate off, I would think. No guarantees though. You know what let's do? Let's see if it'll... Actually no, you know what? We'll just put it on the outside loop and push it with 4501. That'll work. The real question is, can I get it on the track before 4501 gets here? Oops. Come on. Okay, there we go. Alright, now we've got a double header, sort of. Rail wheels for 382, it would definitely help with what I'm doing here, but it's still very light. I think it would have trouble running as a 3-rail engine. This is as close as it gets to being operational in 3-rail. It has been done. I did have this running at one point off a battery and a gondola that it was pulling, but it could just barely pull that, so I figured it probably wasn't worth trying to convert
3-rail track power. Also, it can just barely handle this 072 curve on the outside. It couldn't possibly take anything tighter. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but as it comes around this corner, it actually picks up the inside wheel of the pilot truck slightly on this curve. Or at least in some parts of it. Actually, it's not doing too bad. Oh, there it did a little bit. But yeah, it's pushing its luck there. Actually got through the switch okay. That surprised me. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I haven't shown this on the channel, but yeah, I did add another siding over here since the last video on this layout. There's going to be a passenger station here, and I wanted to be able to store the full consist of Pullmans there, so I can have 2 different passenger consists without taking them off the layout. So I bought another switch at a trade show. It's actually a much nicer switch than the ones on the rest of the layout. Oh, Darth Santa Fe. Well, he is the wizard. If anyone can do it, Darth Santa Fe can do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean anyone else can do it. Because that guy has supernatural powers with train stuff. I don't think rolling the wheels by hand is going to do anything for the motor because it has a metal worm gear on a belt shaft. The wheels would break before the motor did. Better to just start taking screws out. The steam train, man, we were running them a little bit ago. We can run them again. But I want to run a couple other things first. I want to run everything that I have that runs at least once during this stream, and then we can go back and do some again later. Chase, I might get an HO382 at some point. I'm actually talking to somebody about doing a commission on one to do the DCC and sound conversion. So I'll take a look at that one and I'll see how hard it is. If it's really, really difficult, I probably won't bother. But if it's doable and the results are decent, I might end up getting one. Any recommendations for a small layout? Have industrial sidings that you can switch. Like, I could theoretically use this as an industrial switching layout because I'm going to have some kind of industry here, probably a fuel depot of some kind. I've got the door factory over there. And then this here is going to be like an interchange track or a team track or something. So I want to be able to do fairly elaborate switching on here. But the main thing, one of my main rules of layout design is minimize the number of switches, because every switch is a potential trouble point and an expensive piece to buy. So, like, if you could have one siding service more than one industry, do it. Take a look at, there's a couple of books on this that are really good. John Armstrong's Track Planning for Realistic Operation is probably like the go-to book for that sort of thing. Hello, Trucking Industries. Yeah, we're running O-scale this time. I've had a lot of requests for it, so we're doing it. Oh, I forgot to turn the headlight on the Alco. I do really like Bluenami and Soundtrax decoders in general, at least Tsunami and Bluenami, because you can hear how the prime mover's revving up and down as it goes around curves, and the load varies slightly. TSCS Wow Sound does that, but it's not as fine-tunable. As far as I'm aware, no other system between those two currently has that feature. I think ESU Lock Sound has implemented a much simpler version of it, but they don't have like the full
range of adjustability. But it really sounds a lot more realistic to me than just having the prime mover speed tied to the speed of the train like MTH sound does. Nice Crazy Spud. Congrats, that'll be a cool layout. Yeah, the motor in the cab could definitely be rigged up with DCC. You just have to add 3-rail pickups. The hard part isn't that, it's getting it mechanically to run well on 3-rail track. Because the flanges aren't as deep, the pilot truck doesn't swing as far. It's just not really built for it. And obviously the plastic frame is flimsy enough that if you added enough weight for it to actually pull decently, I think you'd run a serious risk of breaking something. Like 2 and 3 rail O-scale stuff is really just kind of built differently. This is 3 rail, so this has like the super chunky wheels, the big chunky coupler. This is 2 rail, so you can see the wheels are much closer to scale size, the flanges aren't as deep, the coupler is much smaller, this one's a KD. This is the sort of thing that the Rivarossi model is designed to work with. The rail on the track is also much thinner. So although 2-rail stuff will roll on 3-rail track, it's much more sensitive to, like this joint here. This handles it okay, but if it was a little bit less adjusted properly, it might be a problem. Let's take that Mogul for a couple of laps. It is acting weird, so I'm probably not going to run it a whole lot. But it is a nice engine that I'd like to run at least once during the stream. I guess I'll put here. So this has the wireless tether, and I think that's probably what isn't working right. Because it behaves exactly the same whether or not it has the tender. SPR, the 460 that I had in the front was the Rivarossi 2-rail Illinois Central 382, the Casey Jones engine. I was pushing it because it doesn't run by itself on 3-rail track. So this Mogul runs okay. It doesn't have any kind of speed control that works. So, like, it's very sensitive to changes in load. The main issue that I was having, besides the lack of chuffing, is every time I blow the whistle, it reverses.
so it stops. If I hit it again. Oh wait, okay. See, this is also part of the problem, is it does something different every single time. Last time, when it started up again, it went backwards, but now it's not doing that, and I don't know why. So, I've been meaning for a long time to make a video on converting O-gauge engines to DCC, and I think this is going to be a perfect example to use, because mechanically it's fine, but the electronics are borked, so it's kind of a perfect candidate for a DCC conversion. Yeah, it's the Everett Railroad we have at home. It is a really beautiful model. Like, this is, I'm not surprised they reused this tooling for the Legacy version, because it is a really, really nice die-cast scale engine. It just suffers from having electronics that are 20 years old. Hey, welcome, Red Dead. Yeah, we're doing an O-gauge stream by popular demand. Obviously the O-gauge layout is still very unfinished, but the people wanted an O-gauge stream, and my job is to entertain them, so here we are. Steam isn't king. I'm a big fan of building layouts on hollow core doors. This entire thing is built on doors, but if you're doing HO or O scale, the door may not be wide enough, so you may end up just using a 4x8 piece of plywood. If you do that, put some kind of soft roadbed under the track, either cork or homosote or something, otherwise it'll be really loud. But there's plenty of articles and videos on just building a very basic bench work. If the 4x8 doesn't really fit nicely into the room, which is frequently the case, you could also look at doing a shelf layout where it's attached to the walls. Sort of like this, except this technically isn't a shelf layout because it's supported by legs. Shelf layouts are usually only like maximum 2 feet deep. But there are people who can do a better job than me of explaining all the different types. But I would say get some books. The Kalmbach Industries books are good. They're usually made up of articles out of Model Railroader magazine. They just take a bunch of articles on a given subject and put them in a book. And I learned most of what I know about the basics of this hobby from those books. So like Track Planning for Realistic Operation by John Armstrong is a good one. Honestly, any of the John Armstrong books are really good. I think they have one specifically on shelf layouts. SBR, these doors I actually got for free off Facebook Marketplace. Somebody was renovating a house and was just getting rid of a bunch of doors. I've built I built 2 layouts out of more than one door before, and I've never paid for any of the doors. I always got them off for free off Facebook Marketplace from people who are renovating houses. Usually they just want them gone. Yeah, Steam isn't king for O-gauge. Honestly, a shelf layout is definitely worth considering because you'll have room for much wider curves. And the wider the curves are, the better it'll look and the more variety of stuff you can run. Yeah, Vintage Renewed, more doors. I actually do have one extra door that I got with this lot that I didn't use because I didn't need anymore. I might build an N-scale layout on it or something. No, Red Dead! That's actually how my previous Athearn Mogul, the original Red Oak number 1, that's what happened to it as I dropped it. Are you able to, how bad is the damage? Can you fix the details?
far did it fall? Like, I probably could have fixed mine if I'd had another one to salvage parts from. But since that one was already on its way out, I decided not to bother. But yeah, that sucks. Almost a little suspicious that both of us had the exact same engine that met its fate in the exact same way. Also, I should try not to touch this painted surface too much, because I just painted it last night and it actually still feels a little tacky. Oh yeah, folding table would be a good idea. Wow, we got 28 people watching. Ooh, FDM printed cow catcher. I've FDM printed G-scale cow catchers before without a problem. Even in O-scale you can make it look decent. HO's pushed it a little bit. The cab on here is FDM printed. I printed each wall laying flat and then glued them together like a model kit. And then I did a little bit of sanding to smooth it out. There's still a couple of places where you can see some very faint marks, but I think mostly I was able to disguise it pretty well. And then obviously lots of layers of paint. Steam isn't king. Honestly, in most cases, building your own table is probably the best option, because then you can fine-tune the dimensions to exactly what you want. The other thing you can do is just like put the layout on like a piece of plywood or foam or something and set that on top of a regular table, and then you can always swap out the table underneath if you want to. If you go that route, it probably is a good idea to put some kind of wood framing around the outside of the piece of plywood so it doesn't flex too much. Yeah, I need to try smaller nozzles. I've only ever messed with the regular .4s. Honestly, Steam isn't king. Since you're probably going to be building scenery on top of it anyway, you don't really need a nice table. I would just look at a thrift store first. Mr. Dominic, there's a number of YouTube channels that have pretty good info for people starting out. Maker's Muse is one that I've learned a lot from. But there's a ton of them. As soon as the train passes here, I'm going to duck out and get something to drink, so I'll be right back. Alka must have stopped because I went out of Bluetooth range. Yeah, the Ender 3 was a nice printer in its day, but the technology has just moved so much further on now. I'm using an Elegoo Neptune 3 Pro, and it's been really solid and reliable. I've never really had any major issues with it. I think they're up to at least the Neptune 4 now, but it works well enough that I've really never seen fit to upgrade it. I've also heard from people that in some ways the 3 was actually better. So I am in no hurry to get another printer because the one I have works really, really well. But I actually used to work at a shop that carried Elegoo printers. That's where I got mine. And they have really good customer support. They have really good parts. They're reliable. We had like half a dozen of them running 12 hours a day and hardly ever had any issues with them. So in the 3D printing world, I consider myself a fan of Elegoo, at least for FDM. I have no experience with their resin stuff. Anycubic I have heard is good for resin. I had one of their filament printers before I got my Elegoo and I was not super happy with it. But it was a really cheap one, and that was a number of years ago, so they may have improved since then. Something else. I might run the General again. I don't know why YouTube keeps holding random chat messages for review when they don't contain anything offensive. Like it just held one of Red Dead's messages for review for no apparent reason. I don't know why I did that. Ooh, 4 feet onto a hardwood floor. Tender wires, tender step, box lamp. Oof. That sucks, Red Dead. I'm sorry. I can look and see, because I do have some spare parts for those, I can look and see if there's anything that would be helpful, but I definitely don't have everything that you would need. Yeah, Nathan, I don't have any experience with Bamboo Labs, but from what I have heard currently, they're very kind of focused on proprietary stuff and not making it like user serviceable, which I don't like. I like being able to fix my own stuff. It's another reason why I like the Elegoo ones, because they're very upgradable and customizable, and you can tinker with them, and they're pretty. They're pretty easy to fix if you need to fix them. Like, literally mine, when I moved, I had it packed in a box and I didn't realize there was something resting on the bed. So, like, the metal plate that supports the bed underneath was all bent when it arrived. I was literally able to just, like, grab it with a pair of pliers, unbend it, re-level the bed, and it's been fine for, like, 3 years since. I never had to replace that part. So the Elegoo ones are pretty bulletproof in my experience. Left-handed railroader, it's 10:22 here, so I think we're in the same time zone. Oh, the remote died. Darn. Well, I guess that's your excuse to put Blue Nami in it, if that's something you want to do. I am thinking about putting Blue Nami in mine, because I don't really like the sound that it comes with. What was I going to do? Oh yeah, let's run the General again. How can I get my smaller cab for the... So, my cab is 3D printed, and I had to do quite a bit of work to get it to look as good as it does. But if you want, if you're up for some 3D printing and fabrication, I can try and dig up the files for it and send them to you. I keep meaning to publish them, I just never got around to it. What I did was I printed the whole thing flat and then glued it together, and it took a few attempts to get it straight enough that it fit properly and it looked decent, and then obviously I did a lot of paint work on it too. But with some work, you can get pretty good results. Steam Isn't King, we did a doubleheader a little while ago. Oh, that's a bummer, Red Dead. Yeah, I don't think I need another parts one. I appreciate the offer, but I think I have enough Roundhouse Mogo parts floating around to last me quite a while. Yeah, Lionel 080 would be a good candidate for Blue Nami. Before you buy a decoder, hook up an amp meter to the track and measure how much current it draws under full load. Like if you hold it in place and the wheels are slipping, that's the like if that's over 2 amps, you're gonna need the big decoder, the 4408. Alright, we got the General in the inside line this time. I really need to get a better sound decoder for this thing. Also, if anybody wants an engine upgraded to Blue Nami and they don't want to do the work themselves, that is something I can do as a commission. Oops! Hold on, hold on. I forgot. Oh, thanks, CSX. I forgot, when I programmed 4501, I forgot to change the address so it was still 3, and the General's also 3 because that's its actual number. So when I started up the General, 4501 also started moving. It only stopped because it ran over a switch the wrong way and it derailed the tender. So I gotta keep a closer eye on that. What I should do is just go ahead and change the address on this, but I'll get around to that later. Any functional MTH 460s? Unfortunately not Red Dead. I have about 1.5 of them in parts, but I don't have one put together and running at the moment. Bro moment. Thankfully I've got enough room here that I don't think it was going to fall off. That's actually another nice thing about 3-rail, is that if something comes off like that, the center rail will catch it by the flange. But yeah, that it ran backwards because this switch, these guardrail switches aren't sprung. I mean, technically they are, but it's a really stiff spring, so yeah, that could have been disastrous. No harm done though. It's all good. Put it on the track over here. Left-handed railroader, it really depends on what the locomotive is, how much work it needs, things like that. I haven't done any Blue Nami ones yet, so I'd have to take a look at it and figure out a quote, but I think it would probably be about the same as my as a quote for an HO engine, because it's about the same amount of work. If it doesn't need a motor, if it just needs the decoder, I think probably $100 in labor would do it, plus the cost of parts, obviously. If you're interested, send me an email, redoaktrains@gmail.com. Send me some pictures of what you're working with and we can figure something out. Do not change that sound decoder, okay. It actually, because it's QSI, it does sound very similar to the Protosound 1 that this engine had originally. Yeah, left-handed railroader, send me an email. redoaktrains@gmail.com. Also, yeah, if you want something installed and you don't have the decoder, you can let me know which one you want, and I'll buy it and install it for you, and then just send you the bill. That's great, Crazy Spud. Yeah, soldering is a really useful skill to have, especially in this hobby. Carlisle and Finch. No, it doesn't ring a bell. Oh, no worries, left-handed railroader. Whatever you want to do is fine. I do have a bit of a backlog for commissions, so it would probably be a couple weeks to a couple months before I'd have a chance to get to it anyway. The Williams Girls set. Oh, right, yeah, the pink ones. Yeah, I've seen pictures of the old Lionel ones. That seems like kind of a colossal marketing fumble back in the day, but it is kind of hilarious. Like, if a girl wants a train, just buy her a train. You don't need like a gender-specific train. Like, regular trains aren't inherently male. Just buy the kid a train. Have I tried out ESU Locksound yet? Briefly. I've worked on some friends' engines that have it. It sounds really good. I find the programming a little bit challenging because I'm used to the way that Soundtrax does it. But I'm sure I'll figure it out. I do plan to install it in at least one HO engine. Yeah, the GG ones are cool. Steam Era NS Berkshires. Which ones are those? $1896. Holy cow. Wow, I'll have to look those up, Gilded Rail. That's fascinating. Yeah, Nathan, a friend of mine does have a lock programmer, so I've played around with that a little bit. It's kind of more than I need right now. Like, if you want to do custom sounds, I could see it being really useful, but for most applications, it seems like Soundtrax or TCS is just easier. Alright folks, what should we run on the outer track? Oh yeah, Gilded Rail, I did see those. That definitely looks interesting. I was comparing it to the proportions of various 10-wheelers. I couldn't find one that I think will work quite right because the front axle just needs to be too far forward. But I'm sure it's doable. Maybe I could just start with a 440 and add Walschaerts valve gear. Hello Rock Gamers, yes, it's the O-gauge layout. People have been requesting an O-gauge stream, and their request has been fulfilled. Blue Bonnet F7? Sure. Let's put that on the passenger train this time. Oh yeah, the Grand Valley track pack is neat. I do like the Woodland Scenics like layout kits. I've just never bothered to do one because I like designing my own layouts. But if you just want something that's basically ready to build, they seem like a good option. I do like the idea of the whole scenery being supported by foam because then it's fairly light and you can move it without too much trouble.
30 years since Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was canceled. I'm starting to understand why people say they feel old all the time, because I didn't realize it had been that long. I never really watched that show. I didn't really watch TV much when it was on. I was too young. But I know it is like one of the classic 90s shows. And obviously it launched Will Smith's career, which is huge. I'm not that big a fan of the movie Wild Wild West. I don't think it was written very well, but Will Smith has been in some good stuff. I really like the first Men in Black movie. I mean, it's cheesy, but I like cheesy stuff sometimes. That's probably my favorite movie of his that immediately comes to mind.
Norfolk Southern Berkshires.
Huh. I'm not familiar with those.
They're rare enough that apparently I've never run across them. I'll have to look them up in a bit.
Are these the tubular track power lock-ons? I haven't messed around with those too much. I've never really delved into tubular track. Before this, I was just doing fast track, but this layout is kind of my first major foray into O-gauge. When I was living on the West Coast, there's a lot less of an O-gauge community there. Like, pretty much everything is either HO or G. I don't know why. I guess it's just a regional thing, but like West Coast hobby shops carry some O-gauge, but not nearly as much as you see here. Yeah, Kato Unitrack is really good stuff. Of all of the snap-together plastic track systems, it's really the only one that I would recommend. Like, not like with the caveat of like, oh, it sucks, but there's nothing better. It's actually good. Like, Bachmann Easy Tracks kind of sucks. Lionel Fast Track kind of sucks. But Kato Unitrack is just genuinely a really good quality product, and I would be happy to use it. It is kind of pricey for a permanent layout, but it does have the advantage that it's really easy to assemble. It'll just work reliably. You don't need to do anything fancy with it. Menard's tubular track is supposedly pretty decent. I haven't tried it, but everyone seems to say it's basically identical to the old Lionel stuff. Yeah, Vintage Renewed. If you ever come out here, let me know. Bring some O-gauge stuff and we'll run it. Supersonic, technically I do, but I'm almost never on there. I only use Discord for people that I'm like playing games on stream with. I don't have a public Discord. American Flyer, yeah, they did make some O-gauge stuff. It was... their main thing was S-gauge, but I think, I know at least before they kind of established their S-gauge line, they did try to compete with Lionel in the O-gauge. I mean, Bachmann Easy Track's not bad, it's just, like, once you get it assembled, it's fine. It's just kind of a pain to get the rail joiners all lined up properly, and it's kind of loud. Alright, have a good one, Red Dead. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, Gilded Rail, I'll check the Discord after the stream. Atlas O-gauge track is really nice. I wanted to use Atlas for this layout, but it costs like twice as much as the Gargraves that I ended up using. The main reason I went with the Gargraves was because it was cheap. It is decent track, but it's definitely not as nice a quality as the Atlas stuff. For one thing, this is hollow rail, while the Atlas is solid rail.
this also has fairly loose dimensional tolerances, like the curve radius is kind of more of a suggestion than a consistent number. Supersonic, I do have an eBay alert set for those Dreyfuss Hudsons. I don't really have the money for one right now, but it's definitely on the bucket list. American O-Gauge uses 3 rails. It is kind of the same reason British 00 still exists. It's basically an old standard, and everybody, they're still trying to make everything backward compatible, so they never really move. Like, there is such a thing as 2-rail American O-scale, but it's much less common. The main reason is Lionel established 3-rail in the pre-war period when, like, plastic in consumer products wasn't really very well developed. So, in order to make the wheels attach to the axles properly, at least this is what I've been told, they had to make the axles metal and the wheels metal, so it was all one solid assembly, which means obviously the 2 outer rails are going to be electrically connected together, which means you can't use them for 2 separate pickups. So what they had to do was add a 3rd rail for the center pickup, and then they could have something that wasn't a wheel ride on that. And obviously these are plastic ties, but the old Lionel tubular track had metal ties, and then the center rail had like a piece of cardboard in there insulating it. So basically it was a workaround for before plastic insulators were really practical. Nowadays, obviously, they can just make a little plastic insulating ring for the axle, but that wasn't really feasible back in the day, hence 3-rail. And it does have some other advantages as well. Like you can do reverse loops with 3-rail, and you don't need any special wiring. Hello, Ricardo. Yeah, British 00 was made to fit bigger motors because they tried to do HO, which is what the rest of the world was doing. But because British trains are so small, the motors didn't fit, so they kind of cheated it to just be a larger size. Which also happened with some of the smaller American stuff. Like those Mantua 460s are about approximately 00 scale for the same reason. Yeah, Rock Gamers, the reverse loops were also another reason for 3-rail. But of course, then later on, once Bakelite was developed, they could do axle insulators then, and it made it easier to do the electrically separated center rollers as well. But by that point, 3-rail was such a well-established standard that they wanted everything to be backward compatible, so people didn't have to like buy all new track and everything. And that pretty much continued right up to the present day. Each thing has to be backwards compatible with the last thing, which was backwards compatible with the last thing, and so on all the way back 100 years to, actually more than 100 years, to the original O-Gauge train sets. Which means Lionel pre-war stuff will still run on modern O-Gauge track. Either an O or HO CR number 3 would be awesome. I think it's probably more likely to happen in HO because it's less expensive to tool up a completely new model in a smaller scale, at least up to a point. I'm hoping that Bachmann does one eventually, or somebody does one eventually, but it'll probably be Bachmann. The thing with O-Gauge manufacturers, and it's true of every scale, but it seems especially common with O-Gauge, is that they tend to just use the same tooling for everything because making new tooling is really expensive. Like, this Union Pacific 119 over here is actually just New York Central 999 dressed up in a costume. It's the same tooling. They changed a few details, but it's the same tooling. And when they do tool up something specifically for a different prototype, like the Lionel Brass Hybrid Legacy 440s, it becomes so expensive that most people can't afford it. Yeah, the 3-rail does make stuff like crossing activations way easier. Another advantage of 3-rail that I came across while building this layout is you have a lot more redundancies for electrical pickup. So basically, all of the wheels, you have twice as many contact points because it's on both rails for one side. And then the center rollers are sprung, so they're always making contact with the rail, which is more reliable than a wheel that sometimes lifts off when there's a slight dip and stuff like that. So I've found 3-rail to have much more reliable electrical contact than 2-rail, so that's another advantage. Have I come up with a new name for it? I have not yet, actually. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about on this stream, is I want to rename this layout. So my original plan was to call this the Lone Pine Railroad. But then I found out that there actually was a real Lone Pine Railroad, and one of my conditions for coming up with a name for this is that it didn't correspond to any specific prototype. The real Lone Pine Railroad was a branch of the Southern Pacific in California, and it was obscure enough that I didn't discover it until after I had already made the introduction video for this layout. So, I need to think of a different name. I'm gonna go with more of a New England sort of look for this, because that's where I am now. So I'm trying to think of like kind of a generic New England name, kind of like what I did for the Westport and Shelter Cove, my HO layout, where I just picked really common small town names up and down the West Coast and combined them. So I want to do the same thing for the East Coast. I just haven't decided which names I'm going to use yet. I do kind of like the idea of still incorporating the name of a tree somehow as kind of a thematic thing with red oak. And because this layout's built on doors and it's based on the red oak's design, the red oak was also built on doors, I kind of see it as a spiritual successor. And I did think about just calling this the red oak, but I don't know, since it's not the same layout, I feel like I don't want to like just duplicate the name. I want to do something new. But in the kind of a similar vein. I'm thinking maybe White Pine, something in White Pine. I don't want to do White Pine and something, because then it's the same initials as Westport and something. But I'm thinking like Bridgewater and White Pine or something along those lines. I don't know. I'll figure it out later. For now, I'm just calling it the O-Gauge layout. It is a plywood Pacific right now, very much. Door wood. Woo Attic Peak Railroad. Twin Pines. I had a Railroads Online save called Twin Pines a while back, but it's a pretty obvious Back to the Future reference. New Red Oak. Birch Creek is not bad. White Pine Central's not bad. I should find out what material these doors are made of, like what type of wood. I'm not sure how you would even tell. On the Red Oak, somebody had just written it in Sharpie on the end. That's where I got the name from. But on these, there are no markings to speak of. There is a poster on the bottom side of one of these doors for how to do the Heimlich maneuver, so maybe I should just do something in reference to that. Also, this is kind of a neat viewpoint. Maybe I should do the rest of the stream from down here. Green Lake and Tulsa Pines, that's a good one. New England Central is a little generic, but I don't mind it. Crestwood Pacific. Cedar River's not bad. I just have to make sure that none of these are like really recognizable names of real places. Like I'm probably not going to do Bridgewater because that's a fairly major city in Massachusetts, so even though there are quite a few towns called Bridgewater throughout New England, that one is big enough that people are going to assume it's meant to be that even though it isn't. Brown Maple Central. I feel like anything with maple sounds Canadian, which I guess isn't the worst thing. We go in a loop, that's pretty good. I don't know if I want to commit to a joke name, but if I was going to, that's a pretty good name. Been looking for an O-Gauge 440. I like the MTH Premier ones. I've got a couple over here. I mean, these Rail King ones are decent as well, but the Premier ones are much more detailed. Like, this is the this is the actual prototype they're based on, which is New York Central 999. This one's Union Pacific 119, but it's just the same tooling repainted with a few details changed. Pine Fir in Dakota. Yeah, they're couple of real life towns named Robertville. So that does kind of go back to what I was talking about with the Westport engine. Is I just looked up and down the West Coast, especially the northern, like BC, Washington, Oregon, that sort of area, and just picked all the names that reoccur the most often. There's like 2 or 3 Westports and 2 or 3 Shelter Coves. So I figured that like it sets the mood of the area, and it also like creates some ambiguity. Like, is it this Westport? Is it that Westport? Is it a third fictional Westport, which is actually what it is? But like, I like the idea of it like having kind of the general vibe of a certain area, but not being tied to a specific location. Because like the Westport layout is inspired by locations from California all the way up to Alaska. There are bits and pieces of lots of different places in there, just what I thought looked cool. So I'd like to do something similar for this layout, but for New England. Yes, TFFC. I have seen the painted samples of the Bachmann M-Scale 10-wheeler, and they are gorgeous. A friend of mine who was at a train show sent me some pictures. What's going to be the name of the town on the layout? Well, I mean, I'm thinking I'll pick the layout name first, and then the town will be one of the towns that's in the name. So, right now it's to be decided. Basement, certain area, and location. See, I do like using joke names when I set up a temporary layout. Like, I don't know if anybody's been watching this channel long enough to remember the front yard and bad idea. Ooh, Mahogany's a good name. I should do something with mahogany, but I feel like that is kind of more of a West Coast tree. I don't know that much about trees. Redwood Central would be good, but it sounds very California. If I was gonna, because actually the California Western, the skunk train, their slogan is the Redwood route. Yeah, exactly, Keep America. It's the same thing with just basically picking town names that are common in a certain area. So then it's like, oh, well, like if there's already 5 towns called Lincoln in this area, then what difference is one more gonna make? For those who weren't around to see it, the front yard and bad idea was when I tried to lay G-scale track on top of snow. It lived up to its name. Nathan Burke, I'm on the East Coast now. I'm in central Massachusetts. Mahogany and Northeastern, yeah? I do feel like I should incorporate white pine somewhere, because I like the idea of it being pine. Because I'm pretty sure that's what at least the legs of the layout are made of, if not the doors. Be as confusing to passengers as possible and call it the Great Southwestern Railway. Oh, am I looking for a name in East or West? I'm thinking because I live in New England now and I already have one West Coast layout, I want to do this one as like a New England layout. Like a lot of the trees that I have set aside to use on it are like autumn colors, so I'm thinking I'll do it as like a fall foliage type of scene. Like there's going to be some hills along this side, and especially back in the corner there's going to be like some clusters of autumn trees. Pine oaks. Lionel TMCC EM1. I'll have to look into that. I'm trying not to get really big locomotives because this is still a fairly small layout. Like I'm kind of using Southern 4501 as like a loose maximum size. Like I might get like a Berkshire at some point, but I'm probably not going to get anything bigger than that. I doubt I'll get any articulated engines because I think they would just overwhelm the layout. train floats and donut holes. TFFC, I do want to add an ON30 line. I wish that I'd thought of that earlier in the construction, because then I could have made some room for it. As it is, what it's probably going to be is an ON30 street running line down the street on this side, that then goes around the corner and ends to the corner back there. And then on this side, I'll probably try and tunnel through the wall into the closet, so it kind of has somewhere to go. But it is going to be point to point. There won't be room for a full loop. So I'll be able to run trolleys on that. I have one of those ON30 Bachmann trolleys. Or I'll be able to run steam passenger trains in like a push-pull situation. It won't be like the most plausible narrow gauge railway, but it's what I have to work with. Yeah, we do have specific New England trees: sugar maple, eastern white pine, paper birch, northern red oak. See, that's the thing, is when I did the original red oak layout, I just named it after something that somebody wrote on one of the doors, and then I later found out, oh, that's mostly an East Coast tree. So I did kind of picture the Red Oak Railway as being somewhere in New England. So I guess there could be a case to be made for this just being a revival of the Red Oak. It's just a different scale. But that is definitely still a possibility, and it would tie in with the channel name. Although I kind of like the idea of the channel name being for a layout that doesn't exist anymore, because then people aren't going to be like, oh, why is the HO layout that you make like 70% of your videos on not called Red Oak? And then I don't have to do the whole spiel again. Rock Gamers, no, I never had a reversing loop. I did think about trying to do one, because you can do that pretty easily in 3Rail. But it just didn't really fit into the room. Like, the main thing was that I wanted as broad a curves as possible so that I could run these full-length scale passenger cars. And that meant that in this room, pretty much all I could fit was an oval. The other thing is that because these walls slope inward, because it's in the attic, the only place in the room where there's actually full height to walk is about a 3-foot aisle down the center. So it kind of made sense for that to be the walking space and the layout to be about, I think this is like 30 inches deep to the wall. So that kind of forced it into an oval shape. So if I had more room to work with, I would love to do a reversing loop, but in this case it just wasn't really practical. So since I couldn't do a super complex shape for the loop, I did 2 tracks so I could at least run 2 trains and have some more action. Red Oak Part 2, Electric Boogaloo, there you go. A Ford 080? Oh, the G-scale stuff, yes, I did have a reversing loop for that when I laid it out on the floor. But I'm running battery power on that, so the electrical stuff doesn't matter. That wasn't a permanent layout, though. That was just a temporary thing to film a few videos. Hooterville, yeah, I could do. I don't know if I want to do a TV show tie-in, although it probably wouldn't be too hard to modify one of those MTH 460s into the Hooterville Cannonball. Oh yeah, Green Lake. Yeah, Rock Gamers, what I do is, because Blue Nami can run off of any power source, it doesn't need track power, because you're controlling it wirelessly. So I just put rechargeable battery packs in the tenders of my G-scale engines, and then I don't have to hook up power to the track at all or keep it clean. I just run them off my phone with Blue Nami. Ford did have steam. I'm assuming Ford didn't build steam locomotives. I'm assuming it's like Baldwin or somebody else built them. I'll do some looking into that. Yeah, I would need an open-end combine. The passenger cars that I'm planning on 3D printing are that sort of 19th century design with open platforms, and they're fairly short. So that actually would be pretty close if I wanted to do a Hooterville Cannonball. And because it's the same real rolling stock, it could double as a Back to the Future train as well. I could do a native word. I'd have to find one that was accurate to the location, obviously. I don't know. I do think there's like a 50% chance I'm just gonna call this the like Red Oak Revival or something. It is kind of expensive until you look at the prices of Lionel Legacy stuff. But yeah, it is like, for smaller scales, the 2 amp Lunami decoders aren't that much more expensive than a regular HO sound decoder. I think they're like 30 bucks more. But for O scale stuff, in a lot of cases, they're heavy enough and draw enough current that you need the big 4 amp one, which costs about twice as much. Again, not that much more than like the big 5 amp TCS WOW sound decoders, but that's still like a $200 or $250 decoder. That's a lot of money. But that is kind of the nature of the game in O scale. That said, in G scale, because the trains are geared so slow, and they're usually built mostly of plastic, so they're less heavy for their size, you can often get away with HO decoders in G scale that you can't in O. It's weird. But like Bachmann big haulers can run on HO decoders just fine. Hello, Josh Cannon. Robert, I'm probably not going to bother doing a timetable if I'm honest. That's not really part of the lore that interests me enough to bother doing it. I don't know, I might at some point. But that clock on the wall has been stopped for like a year, and I didn't even notice until the other day. So, scheduling is not my strong suit for trains. If I had to choose which cities it ran through, I mean, it would obviously have to go through Worcester, because that's where I am. Oh yeah, shipping fees is where they get you. If I had to choose what cities it ran through, I don't know. I'm always kind of reluctant to tie a fictional railroad into real life locations, because then somebody could always go like, oh, but what about this other railroad that served that town? Or like, what about this industry that existed that doesn't work with that? And like, once you start trying to tie it in with real world stuff, it always gets messy. So I'm trying to like keep the locations vague enough that it can kind of exist in its own little parallel universe, and like it can interchange with real railroads. Like obviously I'm going to be running a lot of B&O and New York Central stuff on this one, but I don't know, I like keeping it a little bit ambiguous. Yeah, even a broken clock is right twice a day. I do think the timetable is cool, Robert. It's just not something I'm probably going to do on mine. But I applaud those who have the patience to come up with a fictional timetable and actually stick to it. Ooh, a Bachmann big hauler for the Emma Sweeney. That's interesting actually, because I was looking into that. The Bachmann big hauler is a model of the Tweetsie 10-wheeler, which is 3-foot gauge like the Emma Sweeney, which is Rio Grande Southern number 20. It's slightly bigger. However, the big hauler is built to 1 to 22.5 scale to match LGB stuff. If you built it in 1 to 20.3 scale, which is what actually scales out correctly for 3-foot gauge on that track, and like the Bachmann Spectrum stuff and a lot of live steam stuff is that scale. If you measure the big hauler in that, like the wheelbase and everything, it actually lines up pretty close for RGS 20. So if you were to shorten the smoke box, build a slightly taller cab, the top height would be about the same, but it would go down below the running boards a little bit. You'd have to change the running boards around, you'd have to change some of the piping, the crossheads, different tender, various things. But I do think it is a feasible kit bash to do RGS 20 with a big hauler. And obviously in that case, once you got then that is the Emma Sweeney. You just have to add all like the Wild West smokestack and headlight and stuff. So at some point I do think it would be pretty cool to do like a model of RGS 20 as it exists today with a big hauler, and then do a second one and do that as the Emma Sweeney, so that I could have a matching pair. Yes, Josh Cannon, this is an MTH Rail King General. I've done some modifications to it. I've repainted it. I've changed some details around. It has a 3D printed custom cab. But yeah, it is based on the General. Hello, Adamus. Adamus? I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I'm probably not going to the York Train Show because it's like a 6-hour drive away from me. But yeah, it does look cool. And also, I do really like your videos. Your videos were one of the ones that got me into Blue Nami. .4014, yeah, 4014's cool. It's just, it's not going close enough to my town for me to be able to afford to go see it, unfortunately. Someone has the G-Scale Emma Sweeney. Okay, cool. How do I do the oil bunkers on my HO tender? Originally, I had an oil bunker that I just took off of a different HO tender. The one that's on there currently is 3D printed, so it's not quite as detailed. It's still something I'm working on improving. But once I can figure out how to do better looking 3D printed oil tanks, I'll be able to add them to everything. The General as built 5-foot gauge. Yeah, the 5-foot gauge thing was interesting. As I recall, the actual purpose of it was so that Union and Confederate railroads wouldn't be able to connect to each other. But obviously after the war was over, then they had to re-gauge everything to standard gauge. And supposedly with the General, all they did was put wider tires on it to just get the flanges in a little bit. So technically, the main part of the wheel is still 5-foot gauge. I haven't seen it in person, but I do want to someday. Also, for some reason, almost every stream, despite being explicitly avoiding politics on this channel, every single stream I somehow end up talking about the Civil War. I feel like there's a running joke to be made there somewhere. Adamus, yeah, send me an email, redoaktrains@gmail.com. I'd love to chat about Blue Nami and stuff. Okay, JS28, yeah, for the 460s, I think the oil bunker that I used originally was off of one of the Roundhouse Moguls, but there are various other oil bunkers. Like any of the smaller Spectrum engines that come with an alternate oil bunker for the tender, you can probably make that fit. I'm glad, Rock Gamers. Yeah, there's so much. All the political stuff is just such a fiasco right now, especially in the US, and it's all over the internet, and it's really hard to escape. So I try to make this channel sort of a place to get away from all of that stressful stuff and just play with trains. Any steel cabs that can fit on Bachmann's old time 440? That's going to be a little tricky because the boiler is so thin. It's going to be tough to find a steel cab that small. Maybe something off of a narrow gauge engine if you could find it. I don't know. You might be getting into scratch building territory there, unfortunately. Oh, Josh, you got the General as well. Do you have the Lionel one or the MTH one? I keep meaning to get one of the Lionel ones. Nathan Burke, nobody mentioned politics directly. We were just talking about the General locomotive, which always leads to talking about the Civil War. I realize I kind of bring it on myself by running the General. But I mean, it's an iconic historical locomotive. What am I going to do? Not run it? Besides, I have a giant framed picture of the General in the other room. I don't want to let politics stop me from running a locomotive that I think is interesting. Oh, the Lionel one. Yeah, I keep meaning to get one of the Lionel ones. They are like the iconic O-Gauge 440. Yeah, TFFC, we can run Southern 4501 again. I was actually thinking it might be getting to be time to swap out the Menards diesel. We can put it on the passenger train. Yeah, Rock Gamers, exactly. That's why I like it. It's got nice colors and it's a 440, and it's a good example of like the archetypical mid-19th century 440. That particular one just happens to have been involved in a very famous event during the Civil War. But that's got nothing to do with the locomotive itself. It was just something that happened at that time in history. Alright, because there's a bunch of... What the heck just happened? Oh. So, I switched power to that track. I forgot there's a bunch of locomotives on here that aren't wired for DCC. And I think together, because they all tried to start moving at once, they drew so much current that it tripped the breaker. So I'm going to have to manually move 4501 out on the main track instead of running it out. And I just bridged across there and tripped the breaker again. So one slight problem here is that 4501 is currently set to the address 3 because I forgot to change it. And the General's also set to 3 because that's its actual number, so these are both going to respond to the same control. So we'll have to find a speed that works for both of them. It's just like the old DC days. You can hear how much delay there is on the General's whistle. Yeah, left-handed railroader, I'm seeing you, chats. Did I miss one? Yeah, restore it and run it on the main line. Yeah, politics stops from running a certain locomotive, we failed as a country. Yeah, like obviously I'm not going to run a certain modern UP engine because of politics, but the General is... I don't think that has to be political if you don't let it. Anyway. These are both responding to the same control now, so it is what it is. Why is this moving in lurches? There we go. Oh, the Discord. The Discord is private currently. I don't have the time or motivation to moderate a public Discord, so it exists, but it's not very active. And it's only for... Nathan Burke, I do like single chimes, it's just the decoder that I have in here only has one whistle option. Because it's an old QSI. So I would love to have an accurate single chime on it, but I would have to put a different decoder in it. Crazy Spud, UP they did two different America 250 engines, and one of them had a certain person's name all over it that I won't mention. But Nathan Burke, the Southern 4501 has TCS WOW sound. No, all good left-handed railroader. If you never ask, you'll never know. Vintage Renew, yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't done a no scale. Usually Lionel and MTH both are jumping all over themselves to do tacky political stuff. Hello, North and South. Yeah, 4501 has TCS WOW sound and a custom dual speaker setup. I've got two different speakers in there, one that's really bassy and one that does the higher frequencies. So, it has that deep boomy bass, and it doesn't muffle the higher frequencies like Lionel Legacy tends to. I'm really happy with how it works. Yep, Nathan Burke, that's TCS. Oh, the cat loves the General. That's adorable. I gotta get another cat. I think it's been almost 2 years since I lost Jack. I miss him. The General at speed? We can try. what I'm gonna do, I think, is because I don't want Southern 4501 flying off the layout, I'm gonna turn off the power to the outer track, and then we can go full speed on the General. Boy, this ancient Dakota really doesn't like to go slow. Also, I think I have this program to not go send full voltage to the motor because that would be too fast, but let's see how fast it will go. I think that's the maximum speed that I have it programmed for. Yeah, the thing with TCS is the speakers make all the difference because unlike soundtracks, you can't adjust the EQ of the sound. So having the right speaker makes a massive difference with TCS. Chase, I do have a DeLorean in O-scale, but it doesn't have the railroad wheels on it. Yeah, for the actual 250 locomotive, Union Pacific really dropped the ball. They just did their normal paint scheme and just numbered it differently. Dauntless, I customized this General. This is an MTH one, and I repainted it to try and look more like how the General would have looked at the time of the chase. It's obviously not super accurate, but I tried to get it a little bit closer. I mostly just wanted it to not look like every other MTH General out there. If I had to choose one engine in history to never be scrapped, what would you say? And you can't say NYC Hudson. Well, I mean, I was gonna say NYC Hudson, but if I can't, what else? That's a good question. Maybe the Pennsy S1. I always thought that was really cool. Obviously, it was totally impractical, but I do think it was really cool. Okay, I'm going to get the General going and then mute it. And then get 4501 going, so then we can just hear 4501. Cover the whistle. Now we can listen to the TCS wow sound in all of its glory. Oh, nice, left-handed. You've got the exact same boxcar. No, Lionel's General from the chase set is painted to look like how the General does now, which is a totally different scheme from how it looked during the actual chase because there were many decades and multiple rebuilds in between. Yeah, Sumter Valley number 9. Honestly though, if I had to choose a locomotive to not have been scrapped, I would say the original Jupiter, I think. Or Illinois Central 382. Or 119, but I feel like the Jupiter's the more recognizable of the two. 3 Rivers Rambler, the Southern engine is an old Lionel one from the 90s, but I've put TCS wow sound in it. Which one was the number 9? I don't remember what happened to that one. Josh Cannon, my email is redoaktrains@gmail. Have I seen the BNSF 250? I probably have, but I don't remember. I'll have to look it up. Thank you, Three Rivers Rainbow. Yeah, the sound system makes all the difference. The original sound system in this was not that great. But the TCS WoW sound that I have in there now, I think actually might sound better than Legacy. Lionel made some really gorgeous scale models back in the 90s. The technology for the sound just wasn't there yet, but I'm surprised they haven't re-released this one as Legacy, because it is a really gorgeous model. And it is actually accurate to 4501, which their current Legacy version isn't, because it's K-line tooling for USRA Mikado. Hello Eugene, I'm doing good. Lionel TMCC, I don't have enough experience with it to really have a strong opinion. I understand why they did that rather than doing DCC at the time, because they were trying to make it work with their AC stuff. So it was a solid effort, but I think it has been long ago made obsolete. If I can run 2 trans on 1 track, I should do a great locomotive chase. I could if I had 2 440s that have DCC, but unfortunately, I do have 3 440s, but 2 of them have MTH Proto Sound 2, which won't run on DCC, so I wouldn't be able to control the speed. Would I add lining on the spokes? I guess I could. Thanks, Eugene. I don't know, did it have lining originally? I haven't seen any pictures of it with lining, but it might look neat. I mean, I'm kind of taking some artistic license with this paint scheme anyway, so I guess I could add those. Maybe I'll Photoshop and see how it would look. Three Rivers, yeah, I think I can view it. I just haven't had time to read it yet. I've been super busy lately. Yeah, Crazy Spud. BNSF certainly put in a lot more effort than UP did. I think my favorite one that I've seen was either 611 or Reading 2100, the T1. I know one of the guys who worked on painting that T1, and they did a really great job. It looks really nice. I like the slightly more subtle blue and red. Have a good one, Rock Gamers. How much the old Lionel 4501 cost now? I think I paid about $350 for this one in dubiously running condition. I don't know, I've seen them go from anywhere from 300 to like 600. Pine Floats Railroad. The main thing wrong with most of these Lionel Mikados that you'll find is the original electronics crapping out, probably because the capacitors are too old. How in scale is the MTH 440? So Chase, MTH makes 2 different 440s. There's the Rail King one, which is based on the General. That one is massively overscale for the General, but you can detail it up to be a somewhat halfway passable, larger, like 1880s 440, which is what I've sort of tried to do here. The other one that they make is the Premier one, which is based on New York Central 999. That one is perfectly scale accurate for 999. The UP 119 version is obviously not, but the 999 version is indeed accurate. Have a good one, left-handed railroader. The Lionel General is also somewhat oversized. It's not quite as oversized as the MTH one, but pretty close. The main thing is, like, the running gear and the front half of the engine is actually decently close to scale, but the rear half and the cab is massively oversized because it has to fit the motor. So the Lionel one is less oversized and more just weirdly proportioned. The Marks one, I have no idea, but I think it's pretty far off. Josh Cannon, it's Red Oak Trains. Yeah, 300 to 400 is probably a good budget to have for one of these. You can sometimes find them for a little less, but in that case it'll probably need some work. This one wasn't running when I got it, and I paid $350. It didn't take much to get it running, but the original sound system never worked quite right. I don't think I'd pay more than like 400-ish for one, unless it was like really mint. Also, I gotta start wearing a mic. I'm having to basically shout to be heard over the trains and everything. Lionel Vision Line Hudson, those are gorgeous, but I don't have like over $1,000 to spend on one locomotive. The most I've ever spent on one locomotive was my 999. I paid about $700 for that. Dang, it's almost 11:30. I should think about wrapping up the stream pretty soon. Are there any trains anybody wants to see run again before I wrap things up? I guess we could probably run 999 again. That would make sense. Yeah, I'm gonna try and get the O-scale layout looking a little bit better. I've been kind of procrastinating on making videos about it because it's unfinished. But it's never gonna not be unfinished unless I do actually spend some time on it, so I think it would make sense to document at least some of that. So I think I am gonna try and start making more videos about it. I've just been so busy lately with commissions and family stuff and trying to get the 440, the River Rossi 440 video done. And dealing with some health issues. I've just been swamped lately. I haven't really had time to work on it. 382? Yeah, we can do that. Oh, and the Jeep. Am I going to get a Lionel General William Crooks? I'm not going to get the new one because it looks kind of plasticky and crappy, honestly, but I might get an old General. Yeah, I'll put 382 on again. I'll do the Southern 4501 doubleheader. That seemed to work pretty well. I think the reason why this stayed on the track okay is I was able to, because this has a small little dummy knuckle coupler on the front, right there, which is about the same size as the dummy knuckle coupler on here, so I can kind of brace them together, kind of like the KD delayed coupler position, and then it's able to push it, and it doesn't push it sideways, it just pushes it straight forward. So it doesn't push it sideways off the track like a regular coupler would. So we'll do that, and then on the inside loop, I'm going to take the General off, and we can run the Jeep. But yeah, it's supersonic, I agree. It would be awesome to see that running on here. I just need to... Have a good one, Three Rivers. Whoops, what did I do? Oh. It derailed. Why did it derail? That was weird. I must have shorted something out when I picked up the Jeep. Come on. Okay, that was very strange. New track, AC1. Oh, 4501 did a up on the curve. Yeah, that's probably what came off, and it just didn't affect anything until it reached the switch. There is one of the joints over there that's a little wonky. Yeah, Dauntless, this is the River Rossi 2-rail one. I took the motor out so I could push it. I think this is probably the spot where 4501 derailed because I know the rail is slightly misaligned here. Hasn't really been that much of an issue up till now, but I do need to keep an eye on it. Oh, was it a different place? Weird. Alright, Josh Cannon, I'll take a look at my email after the stream. Yeah, Dauntless, all the River Rossi O-scale stuff was designed for 2-rail and it was mostly plastic. So it doesn't really play very nice on 3-rail track. But this one at least tolerates being pushed. Yeah, the New York Central Hudsons were gorgeous engines. I would love to get one someday. I just don't have the money for another O-gauge engine right now. I'm actually thinking about selling the 119. Crazy Spud, I use track planning software. There's two programs that I use. There's SCARM, Simple Computer Aided Railway Modeler, which I use for the basic track design. Matter of fact, my Westport HO layout actually got featured on the SCARM blog a while back. And the other one is called 3D Train Studio. It has mostly European stuff, but it has a much better system for building 3D scenery. So I'll usually design the layout first in SCARM, and then I'll redraw it in 3D Train Studio once I have the basic track arrangement figured out. And then I'll sort of draw up all the scenery and try to visualize how it's going to look and what's going to go where. I suppose I could just do the whole thing in 3D Train Studio, but SCARM tends to have more accurate track libraries. So I can sort of see like exactly what brand of switch will fit a given spot. Dauntless, I've looked into what it would take to convert the 382 to 3-rail, and it's not really practical. For one thing, it's way too light to pull anything because it's all plastic, and I don't think the frame's really strong enough to tolerate the kind of weight that it would take to make it pull well, much less the motor. The other thing is I would have to add 3-rail pickups, which there isn't really an easy way to do. Yeah, Chase, you can send me a video. redoaktrains@gmail.com. Steam isn't king. I wish I could afford to sell it to you for $12, but no, I think I'm going to be looking for in the 600 range for it. It is in really mint condition. It's really nice. I actually even painted the pilot wheels to match the drivers because it was bugging me that they didn't match from the factory. Also, there's a pipe on the 999 right here that curves to go over that little splasher. On the version with smaller drivers, normally they use the same pipes, but it's curved to go over nothing. So I took that off and put in a straight piece of wire there, so it looks better. That and painting the pilot wheels are the only 2 mods I've done to this. Other than that, it's fact. Oh, actually no, there is a third mod. I messed with the pickups on the tender a little bit, so that it can pick up from both outside rails instead of just one, which makes it a bit more reliable whenever switches. So I've done a few little quality of life and visual improvements to it, but other than that, it's stock. But it's a really nice engine. I just don't need 2 of these, and I'm not letting 999 go, so that one's got to go. Yeah, 600 honestly is about what these go for. I got this one at a train show. I think I negotiated the seller down to like 550-ish, but that's the cheapest I've ever seen one sell for. Normally they go for like 650 to 700. It does look a little bit cursed. It does kind of look like a different engine dressed up as 119 for Halloween. And the moment I can start getting back to Red Duke and O-Gauge Showcase. Well, welcome. I'm glad the timing worked out on that. I don't know if the customization increases the value that much, but even as like just a regular stock one of these goes for right around that much. The MTH Premier ones really hold their value well. Like, I got this 999 for 700, and that's about the cheapest I've seen one go for. Normally they're close to 1,000. Steam isn't king because it's a really high quality model, and because it's really the only scale 440 available in O gauge, other than the line of brass hybrid ones. It'd be worth more if it was Protosound 3, since this is an older one, it's Protosound 2. I think 600 is about a normal price for this, a little on the low end. The Protosound 3 ones will easily go for $1,000.
I do wonder how Eric Strain's can afford all the stuff he buys. He must have an unbelievably well-paying job.
So funny, Nathan Burke, regarding the Jupiter. I'm gonna do things here. Regarding the Jupiter from the Lone Ranger, I can't confirm this firsthand, but I know somebody who knows somebody who worked on that movie, and supposedly their Jupiter was actually based on MTH's Jupiter, which is this same tooling. So that's why the Lone Ranger one is so chunky. I think they wanted it to look a bit bigger and more intimidating than the real one. So I know that the Constitution in that movie was based on Rivarosi's HO scale 382, because it has the same really chunky rods. But the rumor that I've been told is that the Lone Ranger Jupiter was loosely based on MTH's O-gauge Jupiter. And it is kind of cursed. I thought about trying to get an MTH Jupiter to go with the 119 and do like a golden spike thing, but they just don't have the right look. They're way too big. They both just look like 999 in disguise. This 119 is basically 999 in a top hat and a fake mustache. The yellow cab steam locomotive. This one here, this is MTH's version of Union Pacific 119, which was the other engine that was with the Jupiter at the Golden Spike ceremony. It's not very accurate, because it's based on their model of New York Central 999. But it's supposed to be 119. Steam isn't king. What stopped them was the fact that making all the tooling to manufacture one of these models is really expensive, and it's a lot cheaper to just use like the exact same boiler and running gear and tender and everything from an existing model and change a few small details. It's a lot cheaper for them to do that than it would be to design a whole new model from scratch. So they try and get as much mileage out of each model that they have the tooling to build as possible. MTH Blue Comet, that's the one with the Blue Pacific with the feed water heater on the front, right? Those are nice. Track planning software that you can use on mobile, that I have not looked into. I generally always do it on the computer. Both SCARM and 3D Train Studio will run on Windows, that's what I use, so I've never really looked into doing it on mobile. There's probably something out there that would allow you to do that, but I don't know. Oh, for the Lone Ranger trains? Sorry, I misinterpreted what you said. For the Lone Ranger trains, I think it was an artistic decision. I think because it's a Disney thing, they wanted the trains to look really... And because, like, the railroad is kind of the villain in that movie, they wanted the trains to look really big and scary and intimidating, which is why they used 382, which is from, like, 40 years later than the movie is set, as the main engine. And then Jupiter, they wanted it to look big and beefy like 382, so they just kind of... They made a big, chunky Jupiter. Alright, I'll check my email after the stream chase. Yes, Josh, it's in the attic, hence the sloping walls. When we moved into this house, we were looking around, I was like, hey, there's a whole unused storage room in here. That could be an O-scale layout room, and now it is. Yeah, the Blue Comet would be pretty cool. I have looked at possibly getting that one in the future. because I do think having a Pacific would be neat. So I could like run this Pullman consist or one like it that matched the engine. Because like I love running this with Southern 4501, but unless it's an excursion, you wouldn't really see a Mikado pulling a train like this. I have seen some of the SMR stuff, but if you think Lionel Legacy is expensive, whoo boy. Those are at least true to scale, though. But I'm not selling my car to get an O-gauge locomotive. Alright folks, it's getting to be close to about quarter to midnight. I'm thinking about wrapping up the stream. Thank you all for watching. I think the O-gauge stream was a success. I'll probably do another one. I don't know if I'll do this again next week or if I'll go back to the HO next week. We'll see. But I might do this again. We'll see. It is kind of close to Nevada Northern 40. I guess so. It's got the big drivers, certainly. Yeah, it's the cursed 119. I gotta sell that thing. I'm gonna make a video on it and then sell it. I don't need to have both that and the 999. Alright, bye Steam Isn't King. Have a good night, everyone. Bye, Kevin. Bye, Gilded Rail. Let's get one more whistle from 4501 and then I'll call it a night. Have a good one, Crazy Spud. Good night, Josh. Good night, Preston. Yeah, we could alternate every other week. I might do that. Alright, folks. Drink water, eat your vegetables, and look both ways before you cross the tracks. Good night.